Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mike Victim, if you still even remember that theory, but I'm afraid you've been debunked. You are not here to receive movie news, nor have you been informed in the way you assumed, although you have indeed been informed. You have all come here into a fandom of theories and debates, misinformation, and misfortune. A fandom with no exit, a game with no confirmations. You don't even realize that you've been trapped. Your lust for confirmation has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of a child in some unseen event, always seeming so canon, yet somehow impossible. But you will never find him. None of you will. This is where your theory ends. And to you, my brave theorist, who somehow found this theory not intended for you, although there was a confirmation planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This theory will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every theory should. And to you Mike victimers trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your theory. It doesn't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more theories waiting for you after the drama clears. Although for one of you, 2018 MatPat, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. Hours after my fan casting video for the FNaF movie, we got a leak on what characters are going to be in the movie. These characters include Mike, Vanessa, and Abby. In this video, I'm going to be going over these characters, their names and descriptions, and I'll be talking about how, if at all, these could fit into the games if the movie were to take place in the game's timeline. So without further ado, let's get started. Back in the Daco interview, Scott claimed that he intends for the FNaF movie to be about FNaF 1.
People who go to see the movie aren't going to want to see a retelling of the books. They're going to want to see the first game. They're going to want to see a retelling of the story that got them interested in the first place. You know, the first game had the right atmosphere, the right characters, and that's what people are going to want. And ideally, if the first movie does really well, I think it would work great as a trilogy. Five Nights at Freddy's 1, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and Five Nights at Freddy's 3, based on the first 3 games.
Because of that, I think it's most likely that that is still the plan and that this movie will take place in FNaF 1 in 1993. So the main character of Mike is very clearly meant to be Michael Afton. His description is very strange though. Quote, "The male lead, Mike, is in his mid-20s to early 30s. His character description leads to some plot points for the movie. Riddled with guilt over a tragedy in his past, and now struggling to take care of his younger sister on his own, Mike is low on options when he lands a new job to pay the bills, the night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Mike is vulnerable with a tough exterior, though he means well. His obsession with digging for truth may have potentially disastrous consequences." End quote. Right away, we could see the destruction of Mike Victim. Mike here is in his mid-20s to early 30s. Curse of Dreadbear from FNaF VR has a lot of connections to the Bite Victim, and in it, we can find a cake with 7 candles on it. This would mean that the Bite Victim is 7 years old in FNaF 4. That means that by FNaF 1, he would be 17. And even if the Bite Victim wasn't 7 and was like 12 maximum, he would still be 22 by FNaF 1, and that's early 20s, not mid-20s, which was the minimum. We also see that Mike is riddled with guilt over a tragedy in his past. This clearly screams Mike Bro in our faces. The tragedy in his past is clearly talking about the Bite of 83. The Bite Victim doesn't have a single thing to be guilty about. And it's not like it's survivor's guilt, because survivor's guilt is only inflicted if you are one of or the only survivor of an incident in which others died. The Bite Victim, even if he had seen the missing children incident, which is extremely unlikely and basically impossible in my opinion, was not a part of it, unless you believe BV5th, and the only way that would work under Mike Victim is Mike Victim 5th, which is probably one of the worst theories that's ever been created. So yeah, this movie leak confirms that Mike is the older brother. Not that we really needed it to do that, but still. But, like, it's literally everything else about this description that is really, really weird. Mike is struggling to pay the bills and is trying to take care of his 10-year-old sister Abby and gets the job at Freddy's. It also says that he was out of options, so it could be that Mike, since he's almost definitely Fritz Smith, has dug into the murders before and didn't want to do it again, but when he ends up having to work at Freddy's, he gets sucked into all the murder stuff again. It also says that Mike's need to solve the murders may lead to disastrous consequences, but I'll get to that a bit later. But then we look at the description of Mike's sister, and it is very odd. Quote, female lead, Abby, 10. Mike's younger sister Abby is inquisitive and brave, with a creative mind and keen intuition. A bit of a loner who keeps her thoughts and feelings close to her chest, she expresses herself primarily through drawings. Growing up without her parents while being raised by her unreliable brother, Abby has learned to fend for herself. That said, she is still very much a child, emotionally vulnerable, full of imagination, and not without the normal outbursts of a 10-year-old. So, this is very strange. A lot of people have been saying that Abby is actually a short form of the name Elizabeth, or at least it can be, and if that is true, and Abby is Mike's sister just like Elizabeth, that would mean Abby is the movie's Elizabeth. It could just be like a placeholder though, but it's Mike's sister, and he only has one of those, so it's obviously meant to be Elizabeth. Unless he had another sister, but that's unlikely. And it's not Cassidy. Strangely, though, it says that Abby grew up without her parents and just lives with Mike. If Abby is meant to be Elizabeth, that doesn't really make sense because William built Baby for Elizabeth and warns her that she needs to stay away. So how could Elizabeth have grown up without William? Abby is also 10 years old. If this movie is to take place in 1993, that means Elizabeth was born in 1983. This would both explain and confuse things. It would explain why Elizabeth doesn't appear in the FNaF 4 minigames or Midnight Motorist because she just wasn't born yet. The bedroom in the FNaF 4 minigames could just be her room for when she is born in the future. But it would also be weird because all this time we thought that Elizabeth was just killed somewhat earlier in the timeline. But if this movie is canon, or at least is meant to be a mirror to what happens in the games, that would mean Elizabeth dies sometime after the events of FNaF 1. That would be really weird. So what if maybe Elizabeth was conceived before the bite of 83, but was born after it? And maybe William abandons Michael and Elizabeth after the bite of 83, leaving Michael to have to take care of his sister by himself. He couldn't protect his younger brother, so now he protects his younger sister. It would be really interesting, but also really weird, because again, how would William be back in her life by the time she dies? Does he come back after FNaF 1 and take her back from Mike, making Circus Baby's Pizza World then? Maybe. It could be that Elizabeth dies after William took her back sometime after the events of FNaF 1, and then he makes the Fun Times and Remnant as a way to bring her back or something like that. It could be. I don't know. It's a really weird concept, and honestly, I don't understand the canonicity of the movie, but it could potentially fit in the games if it is supposed to. But I mean, it could just be a completely different universe. It could, not have anything to do with the games, but that doesn't make sense because this is Scott we're talking about. And now, the final characters to talk about, and this is the weirdest one. Yeah, quote, female supporting lead, Vanessa, 20s. Vanessa is a police officer who shows up during one of Mike's work shifts. While leading with a bright and sunny disposition, Vanessa has a keen understanding of the dark history and inner workings of the restaurant. Not wanting to reveal too much of what she may know, she works to help Mike survive the night. Vanessa? What? Okay, so Vanessa is a police officer here and not a security guard, so that means it's not meant to be the same Vanessa from Security Breach, so that clears up some of the holes, and it honestly helps me breathe a sigh of relief. But Vanessa also knows about the dark history of Freddy's and doesn't want to reveal anything, but also tries to help Mike survive the night. So basically, Vanessa is the movie's phone guy. That's really weird. So how does this work? Well, I see there being 4 different options. It's still very possible that this movie isn't in the same continuity as the games, or even just has nothing to do with the games, but I kind of doubt that. It's not going to contain any lore for the games, since, again, this is Scott we're talking about. It could just be like another Jeremy situation, where it's just multiple people having the same name, but I think there's more to it. There's a theory that Vanessa from Security Breach is actually Michael Afton's daughter. After all, her last name starts with an A, and the retro CD tapes containing Vanessa's therapy sessions are found in Michael's room. Michael in this location was scooped and basically became a rotting corpse, with the same scooping incident injected Remnant into him, which heals you, and therefore, after Ennard leaves, Michael will end up healing and wouldn't remain a rotting corpse for long, which, in that case, then he could have Vanessa in the future. So here's a fun fact. I was writing this part of the script in my English class, and in the class I sit next to a woman. And I always fear that she'll like look over at my phone and see what I'm writing, and here the last thing on the screen was rotting corpse, so I kind of panicked. Anyway, so if Vanessa actually is Michael's daughter, then it could just be that he named her after this Vanessa character. But there's also another option. You know how sometimes people name their children after themselves? Walter White Jr., Barbara Gordon, Stanley Yelnats the fucking fourth? What if this Vanessa actually ends up being a love interest for Michael, if the movie goes in that direction, and ends up being his wife with whom he has a child, a daughter whom they name after Vanessa, the mother? It's kind of weird, and honestly I don't know if I believe any of this, but it would be kind of interesting if this was canon. Leave a like and subscribe. Thanks. A lot of people have been saying that Abby is actually an anagram for baby. So imagine if Elizabeth at this point actually already died, and she, possessing the circus baby animatronic, is using illusion discs to appear as the living Elizabeth. And when William returns and learns of this, he stuffs her under his house and opens up Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Oh my god, guys, with this totally serious idea, I think I've solved the FNaF movie.